Yeah, sure. I think one of the things that me and Derek discussed as well when preparing for this presentation or conversation today was that we think it's very interesting how sort of what happens, and that's what we've looked at, what happens when a local carbon budget sort of enters the more practical sphere of a local municipality or region, and how is it interpreted, and how do these local actors try to govern and try to reduce the local emissions. And from my part, I also connected that then to sort of how you understand what kind of change that is needed, that we also heard Mikael talk about in the main room, that maybe we know what we need to do, but maybe we're sort of not getting there, and why might that be the case? So I think one thing that would be interesting to discuss or also hear your reflections on in the room would be what do you think that a carbon budget should or could contribute to in the local context, and how could a municipality or region work with it in maybe a progressive or creative way? Or Derek, if you have any additional thoughts to add on that, if no one else feels empowered.
I'll wait and see if we get some input, because it's something I'd like to know about as well.
Yeah.
Yes, Lena Douglas.
Hello. I've been thinking of one thing, and that is, why don't, I mean, I think you mentioned this, excuse me, Derek, that we should treat the carbon budget as we do with financial budgets, so that we actually budget for different building projects. For example, in Stockholm, they are planning to build various roads and the likes, but can we afford them from a climate perspective? And why isn't that included in these carbon budgets? For example, Stockholm City say they have a carbon budget, but a thing like this is not included. And I find that the key to everything. If we only have a certain amount of carbon dioxide left to spend, so to say, then we need to know, what do individual projects cost, and can we afford them?
Yeah, and if that question is directed at me, answering that question is probably a bit beyond the scope of my actual research, right? But just thinking about the discussions that I had with individuals within this region, I know that there is growing interest of incorporating carbon budgets into the planning process. As far as Västra Götalandsregion is concerned, I know that they have adopted a clause where the carbon budget is supposed to be considered as they are working with their regional development strategy. And I know that there is some municipalities that have not yet officially adopted their carbon budgets, but are also considering the development strategies within the municipalities as a means to help address these territorial missions in a more holistic way.
Mm.
So I would agree based on my own analysis and my own understanding of carbon budgets, that it is something that needs to go beyond the kind of internal accounting mechanisms within these locales, even if that is an important approach that also needs to be considered.
Mm.
Sanna, I have a question for you. Since you've studied a couple of different municipalities, do you find that the ones that have implemented carbon budgets see them as a practical tool for mitigation, or do they mostly see them as a visualization tool, like a communicative tool? What's the main focus for municipalities when implementing?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I looked at Järfälla municipality, which was the first municipality you might know to get a carbon budget in Sweden, and Nyköping, who will be one of the central actors in tomorrow's session. So that's also interesting. And they got there just last year. So from that perspective, they have been working with them quite differently, because the carbon budget concept has also developed over these 3 or 4 years between when Järfälla got theirs and then Nyköping. But I would say that it's really a combination. When I talk to people at the municipality, I try to talk both to politicians, but also officials working at the municipality. And they see the carbon budget in many different ways. Some of them really see it as this fact-based carbon accounting tool that sort of can give them feedback on the emission reduction, even though we know that the carbon emission reduction statistics aren't up to date from year to year, which is a challenge in itself. But some of them see it maybe not, to some extent as a communication tool, but also as a tool to collaborate with other local actors, because usually municipal policies and strategies are only concerning the internal municipal operation. But what's unique with the carbon budget is that it covers the whole territory. So you can actually talk to other actors, other companies or citizens or NGOs that are active in the municipal territory, and to say like, this is our joint effort and mission to work with this. So those, I think, were some of the more prominent views, but then there were also these two other views, some expressing that the carbon budget can give them larger mandate to be a bit tougher, to maybe impose more regulations if it's needed. For example, banning cars on certain streets or things like that, even though that's of course a political matter, how eager you are to go down that route. And then sort of going to the most radical end, some pointed to that the carbon budget can really challenge sort of the discourse or the narrative or the stories that we tell about what the society we want to live in, and sort of how we can even work with climate change in more maybe creative or critical ways. So it was like really a big, a large pluralism of different views, I would say.
Very interesting. We have Birgitta Hedström on the list.
Thank you. In my municipality, there is a discussion on having a local carbon budget for the municipality. Or not having a municipality carbon budget. And well, as you described, Sanna, the different goals or what you can achieve with a carbon budget, I think it's very convincing as a help to monitor, as a help to support other local actors, and as a way to communicate, and also as a basis for a discussion among people, a critical discussion. My question really is to Sanna about this, about the communication and the critical discussion among people, and the way to engage the whole society. I mean, different parts of the society, it's enterprises, it's local people, it's organizations, associations, and so on. Could you comment a little bit more on these things, Sanna? Did you dig into this? Or yes, that's my question.
Yeah, it's a good question, and I think it's a key question that you share with many municipalities in Sweden, and it's also a comment or a question that I met a lot during my interviews. How do we actually get more people and actors engaged and involved in this issue and matter? And I think, as I mentioned, the carbon budget can be a support in that it shows, as I said, the territorial emissions, and that it's not only the municipality that can itself affect or create the change that is needed. But also...
Oj, gumman, jag sitter i ett samtal. Tack.
Kan du muta dig, Birgitta?
Sorry.
Yeah.
It's over.
Don't
Yes,
worry.
now listening. It
That's
was
the
my
life.
daughter coming
Yeah.
with my
Can you
food.
just mute the microphone while you're not speaking, please?
Perfect, thank you. That's the life of working at home, I guess, for all of us. No, but the carbon budget can support collaboration for sure. What it also can do is, because the carbon budgets that you get today in Sweden are, I mean, they are quite radical in what they demand you to do. I know now Nyköping's carbon budget suggests them or tells them to decrease their emissions with 19% each year. And that is a tremendous challenge for any municipality in Sweden to take on. And sort of just getting that number on the table and looking at that and discussing that creates a foundation for taking the conversation somewhere else, I think. It really challenges you to rethink, what are we doing here in our municipality, and what are other actors doing and contributing to, and how can we rethink and redo those things. Maybe Derek, you want to add in on this as well?
Yeah, I'd love to touch on this a little bit because like I mentioned, Sanna and I's research shows a lot of parallels, especially in the way that people have talked about carbon budgets. And within the region, and I didn't focus just on regionen of Västra Götaland, I looked at different actors within this region and how they're working together across municipalities. And that type of collaborative approach was highlighted by all of my interviewees as the strength of adopting a common framework from the region and across Sweden, and then down into the municipalities, as a way to not only share resources and share ideas, but also to build up a feeling of working towards a common goal. And I think there's something to be said about having this kind of polycentric governance approach. But all of these tools, carbon budgets, are seen as to be able to be used in multiple different ways, and I think that's something that needs to be remembered, and that we don't try to say carbon budgets only do this or they only do that, but that they're a very broadly applicable tool, especially when you start to talk about goal setting and the way that stimulates a mandate for political action, and then an accountability towards from politicians and officials towards constituents.
Very interesting. We have Elin Gunnarsson on the list. And for anyone new in this room, please write your name in the chat if you want to ask a question.
Yeah, hi everyone. So this is a question for both of you. So when doing these theses, what have you discovered about what research is needed in the field, like about local carbon budgets? So what is like the most critical knowledge that is missing right now?
Great question. I think that's directed to the both of you.
I can start briefly and you can add, maybe Derek. I think from the municipalities, what they are demanding from my point of view right now is also research on maybe related to the first question we had as well, sort of what effects do you get from different actions? So sort of you have the carbon budget, you know you need to decrease with 19% each year, but how do you do that? How does that translate into actual operation down on the ground, so to say? And that's of course research needed in that area, I think. But also I would say these sort of how municipalities or local governments, sort of what role they can take in sustainability or climate transitions. That's also a field where I see a lot of discrepancy maybe, and a lot of different views on what can actually the municipality do here? What should they do? Should they support collaboration? Should they have a stronger mandate or leadership? And how would they do that in that case? So that's two areas where I would see the need for more research. I'm sure you have more, Derek.
Yeah, but again, strong parallels to what I've come across in my research too. But if municipalities are really interested in using carbon budgets as an accounting tool and attaching it not only for their own kind of carbon accounting, but attaching it to economic accounting and how they are using their scarce resources and how is that impacting the carbon budget itself.
I think we have another 5 minutes or so before the break. And I'm sorry I wasn't present to introduce this session before.
I'd just say that then there needs to be some identification of how the tools to do that sort of accounting can be provided to municipalities in a way that is going to be fairly quick and accessible, because from what I know, that type of modeling to do like a life cycle analysis of the carbon footprint of any given decision that you might make is a pretty complicated and intense process, and it's not readily accessible given the vast amount of different decisions that municipalities have to choose between. And I think that's something that would be really important if municipalities and regions are trying to take this approach.
Thank you very much for the answers. I'm going to say that also there's a 5 minutes until the break, but if you want to stay during the break, that's fine with me. And the schedule on stage will start again at 4:15. But we have 5 more minutes here, so if anyone wants to ask a question, just write your name in the chat. Meanwhile, I'll put in a question. We have seen that in normal budgeting, you allocate resources for different sections of a municipality. So say waste handling gets this budget. Have you seen any examples or intentions to do this with carbon budgets, to allocate different parts of the budget to different sections?
I'll start this time, and I'd say generally no. That it is something I think that's been considered, but I think it's another thing that that in order to do that, you would first have to allocate a carbon budget specifically for the municipality and then apportion it. And so it would be just another level of analysis to do that, which is not impossible, but again, it would be something that would need to be done additionally to do that.
Yeah, I can just echo what Derek said. I know that there are discussions and municipalities trying to do it, but that they face large challenges in trying to do it because it is quite a complicated and complex process to try out.
Okay, we have Johan Axel from Västra Gästriklands samhällsbyggnadsförvaltning.
Yes, thank you. I'm working for 3 municipalities, Ockelbo, Hofors and Sandviken. And I've been working with sustainable transport, and now I'm working with these issues. And we are now going to talk about doing a carbon budget. But I just want to comment on the need of having tools to know what activities have effect. It's very important, because what's happening now is that everybody is doing what they think is good. I mean, some municipalities are building more cycle roads and nobody is cycling. You know, you put a lot of effort into different activities, and so it's the only tool we have had, and a lot of other municipalities is using the zero tool developed by KTH and Marcus Robert. That is one where you can get at least some sort of direction, and with activities where you get reduction in carbon dioxide emissions. But there is really, I just want to put, there's really to make it efficient to have a budget. We really need to have some sort of research done, or some sort of checklist. If you do this will happen. And especially if you do this won't happen, because there's a lot of ideas, a lot of good ideas that don't have any effect at all. I just want to comment on that.
I think if I can just comment back on your comment, Johan, I think that's a very important point. But I also think that it might be important to say that there probably will never be such a checklist, right? Because society and human, we are so complex, and it probably will be too late to figure out a checklist to follow. Maybe it's more important that we try out everything we know, sort of. And I know Martin Wetterstedt is in this room as well, I see, and he usually points to the fact that because of the urgency with reducing climate emissions, we can't really wait for technological change either. If we are to reduce 19% this year, we need behavioral change, and that needs to happen on so many different levels. And of course, you want to have feedback on, is this what we're doing the right thing? But maybe we need to question that as well. Will we ever be able to have that numbers, or what can we do if we don't get them? I know it must be very hard sitting in a municipality in that situation, but yeah.
I want to say that the official break now starts for 10 minutes, but if Sanna and Derek is fine with staying here, we can keep the room open until 4:15. We have Jan Greve.
Yes, I'm sorry. I managed to attend this meeting a bit late, but so I'm sorry if you already had discussed this question. But I wonder if you have seen any examples of connecting financial budgets with climate budgets in your research, because I think there's a timing question here. If you have a finance budget, or if you have to some steps you have to take immediately, and some steps you can wait with, and in that way you should connect these two budgets with each other. Do you have seen any examples where they have tried to do so?
Yeah, I think probably both Sanna and I could address this to certain extents, but if it's okay, I'll go about answering it first. But this seems to be the most common approach that municipalities are interested in adopting as a kind of first measure beyond just establishing a goal, is that they are trying to introduce it into somehow make their economic accounting climate responsible. But the trouble that a lot of interviewees that I talked to, that they identified as a limitation in this, is that there just isn't the data available to say, well, such and such action has this climate impact, as Johan was kind of pointing out before. Since that information is not available, there's some uncertainty about whether that's going to be an effective approach or not. Rather than just broadly speaking in broad strokes talking about what kind of potential impact this might have, certain budget decision versus another. But it's very uncertain if a very specific accounting plus or minus is going to be possible in the near future without this type of additional research and providing those tools to municipalities.
Okay, thank you.
So we have no one on the speaking list right now. But it would be nice to hear some more reflections from you, Sanna and Derek, if you have had any new thoughts during this Q&A.
I think it's always interesting to hear or to see maybe the interest that carbon budgets create, I think, in municipalities and beyond. Because I think it is an attractive tool that can provide something that municipalities feel that they are missing. But maybe, I think maybe I would be cautious in hoping that the carbon budget would provide like a climate budget, a budget such as an economic budget for your municipality. It for sure provides you with numbers on carbon emissions, and it provides you with many important things, but it is not an economic budget. It's something else, and that's interesting to explore what it is and what it can be, I think. Yeah.
In your studies of Nyköping and Järfälla, if we're talking about the way a carbon budget is used in a communication manner, in a communicative manner, have you any examples that you can draw upon from how it can be used to actually engage with the public and have people get acceptance for different policy suggestions and such?
I mean, I think, or I'm sure that Nyköping will probably talk more about it tomorrow at the conference, but they were the first municipality to adopt this climate visualizer online tool, which is very effective, I think. It's very visually pleasing and it shows the carbon budget in a very attractive way. But as I mentioned, they've only had it for a year, so they are still working with sort of an early stage with the implementation and trying to see what effects it will have. So I think that's an interesting example of trying out a tool for communication, but it's not possible yet to see what effects it has had. And in Järfälla, that's a slightly different case because they got their carbon budget is more of a static report that they got in 2017, which hasn't been updated or changed since then. So that's more or less been integrated into their municipal climate and energy plan and climate and energy strategy, and trying there then to be translated into political goals and targets. So, and I think in Järfälla they haven't worked that much with it, more as sort of, yeah, as a basis for creating collaborations and discussion around that, but not as sort of an outreach communication tool in the same sense, I think.
I could say that as far as communication goes, in my case study area in Västra Götaland, that the region and the Länsstyrelsen, they've done a really great job in kind of their wider approach to transitions. They have a Klimat 2030, Västra Götaland ställer om. And they've used that platform as a way to facilitate this kind of collaboration and involvement and communicate about carbon budgets as well. So with the Klimatrådet, they use carbon budgets to communicate to kind of important emitters and industry leaders about the role that they play in contributing emissions to this carbon budget. And then as part of their Kommunernas klimatlöfte, they have a program for that, special measures that the municipalities can also adopt. They also have carbon budgets as one of these measures to adopt in line with the carbon budget that the region has adopted. And so I think they're doing a really great job in this region, and something that I think a lot of people could learn a lot from as far as trying to gain a critical mass of actors involved in this process.
Okay, so I think we should all take a 3-minute stretch before the program starts again. I want to thank you very much and thank everyone who has asked questions. If anyone wants to touch down on your research, where should they head?
Good question. As we said, it's not published yet, either of it. I'll have my final seminar next week. I can provide an email if you want to join it. Later, it will be published on the DIVA portal, where all theses in Sweden are published.
Okay. And Derek? Oh, he disappeared.
Yeah, but it should be the same for him.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll keep our eyes open. Thank you very much for this breakout session. See you again soon.
Thank you so much. Thanks.